The hotel room door clicked shut behind my wife, and 5 men in dark suits surrounded her. My son's voice cracked through the phone. "Dad, I just saw Mom walk into that hotel with those guys." My hands shook so bad, I nearly dropped the phone. After 32 years of marriage, I thought I knew everything about the woman who slept next to me every night. But standing there in our tiny Manhattan kitchen, with the smell of her morning coffee still hanging in the air, I realized I didn't know her at all. The worst part? She wasn't cheating on me. What she was actually doing was so much worse. It would put a target on our entire family's back. Hey y'all, if you love these real-life stories that'll make your heart race and your eyes water, hit that like button right now. Subscribe and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I read every single one, and it means the world to this old man. My name is Oliver James Washington. I'm 73 years old now, but this happened when I was 58, living in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment on 145th Street in Manhattan with my wife Loretta and our son Marcus. I was a cop for the NYPD. She was a bank teller, and we were drowning in debt so deep I couldn't see daylight anymore. I still remember the exact moment our financial house of cards started falling. It was a Tuesday morning in February, cold enough to see your breath inside our apartment because we turned the heat down to save money. Loretta sat at our kitchen table, the one with the wobbly leg I kept promising to fix, surrounded by bills spread out like a map of our failures. Student loans from when we'd both gone back to school in our 40s, thinking education would be our ticket out. Credit card statements with numbers that made my stomach turn. And that yellow envelope from the IRS we'd been avoiding for 3 weeks. The morning light hit her face just right, and I could see she'd been crying again. Not the loud kind of crying, the silent kind that comes when you're too tired to make noise anymore. "Oliver," she said, not looking up from the papers, "we're 3 months behind on rent. Mr. Chen came by yesterday while you were at work. He said if we don't pay by Friday, we're out." Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. That's when I knew we were really in trouble. Loretta's hands never shook. Not when Marcus got shot in a drive-by when he was 16. Not when my mother died in her arms. But they shook that morning over those bills. I walked over and put my hands on her shoulders, feeling how thin she'd gotten. We'd both been skipping meals, pretending we weren't hungry so Marcus could eat. "Baby, I'll figure something out," I said, but we both knew I was lying. A cop's salary in New York City is a joke when you're buried under 6 figures of debt. Marcus walked out of his room then, dressed for his job at the bodega down the street. 22 years old, smart enough for Columbia, but working minimum wage because we couldn't afford to send him. He looked at us, at the bills, at his mother's tears she was trying to hide. "I can take another shift," he said quietly. "Jose said they need someone for overnight." I wanted to tell him no, that his father would handle it, that he should be living his life, not sacrificing for our mistakes. But I just nodded because we needed every dollar. That's what kills you as a man, when your son has to become the provider because you failed. We'd gotten those student loans 15 years earlier, full of hope. Loretta wanted to be an accountant. I wanted to move up to detective, needed the criminal justice degree. The loan officers smiled and promised us the American dream. What they didn't mention was the interest that would compound while we struggled to make payments. By the time we started really paying, we owed double what we borrowed. Then the credit cards came. Just for emergencies, we said. But when you're broke, everything's an emergency. Your car breaks down. Your son needs school supplies. The refrigerator dies. Before you know it, you're using one card to pay another, and the minimum payments are eating you alive. That morning changed everything, though I didn't know it yet. Loretta kissed me goodbye like always, her lips cold against my cheek. "I love you, Oliver James," she said, using my full name like she did when something was serious. "No matter what happens, remember that I love you." I should have paid attention to the "no matter what happens" part, should have seen the decision forming behind her eyes. But I was already late for my shift, and I had my own secrets to keep. The precinct had been investigating a new drug operation moving money through local banks. I couldn't tell Loretta that her bank was on our radar. Couldn't tell her that everything was about to get much more complicated. If you've ever had to choose between your badge and your family, you know the weight I was carrying. Sometimes love isn't enough to pay the bills. Sometimes desperation makes good people do terrible things. 3 weeks after that morning with the bills, something shifted in our apartment. I noticed it in small things first. Loretta stopped crying at night, started humming while she cooked, even bought Marcus a new pair of sneakers without checking the price tag. When I asked about it, she said the bank gave her a raise for her 10 years of service. Finally recognized my worth, she said, but she wouldn't look me in the eye. That should have been my first warning. Loretta could stare down anyone, judges, lawyers, even my commanding officer, but she couldn't look at me when she lied. I was just so relieved to see her smile again that I ignored my cop instincts, screaming that something wasn't right. She told me later, when everything fell apart, about the first time she met him. It was a Thursday afternoon, the bank almost empty, except for the usual Social Security check crowd. He walked in wearing a suit that cost more than we made in 3 months, shoes that clicked against the marble floor like a countdown, dark sunglasses even though it was cloudy outside. He bypassed the regular tellers and came straight to her window, even though she was closing out for lunch. "Mrs. Washington," he said, knowing her name without looking at her nameplate. "I have a business proposition that could solve all your problems." His voice was smooth like expensive whiskey, the kind that burns going down but makes you want more. She should have hit the silent alarm, should have called security. But he slid a piece of paper across the counter, a printout of our debts, every single one, down to the penny. "How did you get this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. He smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "I make it my business to know who needs help, and you, Mrs. Washington, need a lot of help. Your husband's a good cop, but good cops don't make good money. Your son's brilliant, but brilliance doesn't pay rent. And you're drowning, aren't you? Checking your account balance every morning, hoping somehow money appeared overnight, skipping your insulin because you can't afford the copay. Oh yes, I know about the diabetes too." He knew everything. Our credit scores, my patrol route, Marcus's work schedule, even knew about the storage unit we'd lost the month before, all our family photos, and my mother's china gone to auction. The proposition was simple, he said, too simple. All she had to do was process some transactions without asking questions, large deposits that would sit for a day or two, then get wired out to different accounts. "Just pushing buttons," he said. "Same thing you do every day, except these buttons will pay off your student loans in 6 months, your credit cards in 3. That IRS debt? Gone by Christmas." He left a business card that was blank except for a phone number. "Call me when you're ready to stop drowning," he said, then walked out like he was floating on air. She held that card for 3 days, carrying it in her pocket like it was burning a hole. Every night she'd take it out, stare at it, put it back. I found it once when I was doing laundry, but it was blank, so I didn't think anything of it. She called him on a Sunday while I was at church. Isn't that something? While I was praying for a miracle, she was making a deal with the devil. He answered on the first ring like he'd been waiting. "Smart woman," was all he said. The first transaction was the next day, $50,000 into an account, $49,000 out. Her cut was $1,000 cash, handed to her in an envelope by a different man in the bank parking lot. She sat in her car for an hour, staring at more money than she'd ever held at once, crying and laughing at the same time. That night, she paid our electric bill, bought real groceries instead of ramen, and filled up my gas tank while I was sleeping. When I asked about the money, she said it was her annual bonus. I wanted to believe her so badly that I did. The man in the black suit had a name, Vincent Caruso, though she didn't learn it until much later. He ran money for the Torelli family, though even saying that name now makes my hands shake. They owned half of Upper Manhattan's drug trade, had judges in their pockets, cops on their payroll. But I didn't know any of that then. All I knew was my wife was finally sleeping through the night and my son could quit his overnight shifts. I thought God had finally answered our prayers. Turns out, sometimes the devil answers first, and his solutions come with a price you won't see until it's too late. If you've ever been so desperate you'd make a deal with anyone, You understand why she picked up that phone. By April, our life had transformed into something I didn't recognize. The refrigerator was full for the first time in years. Real food, not the generic brands that taste like cardboard and disappointment. Marcus enrolled in community college for summer classes, his eyes bright with possibility again. Loretta bought herself a new dress, nothing fancy, just something that wasn't held together with safety pins and prayer. We even went out to dinner for our anniversary, to that Italian place on Columbus Avenue we'd been walking past for 15 years, always saying, someday. I should have been suspicious, should have questioned where the money came from. But when you've been drowning so long, you don't ask questions when someone throws you a rope. You just grab on and hold tight. The lies started small, the way they always do. The bank's giving out more overtime, she'd say, explaining why she came home late. They promoted me to senior teller when I noticed her new confidence. It's a new incentive program when cash kept appearing in her purse. Each lie built on the last one, creating a structure so elaborate she needed a notebook to keep track. I found it later, hidden in her jewelry box, pages of explanations she'd rehearsed, stories to cover stories, lies to protect lies. But that April evening, I just kissed her and said how proud I was. My baby was finally getting recognized for her worth. The woman who'd stood by me through 3 shootings, 2 funerals, and 20 years of barely making it was finally catching a break. She was laundering more money each week, the amounts growing from thousands to hundreds of thousands. Vincent had her moving money for drug dealers, arms dealers, human traffickers, the worst of the worst. But she didn't know that then, or at least that's what she told herself. All she saw were numbers on a screen and envelopes of cash that meant Marcus could have textbooks, I could get new boots for patrol, and we could turn the heat on without checking the bank balance first. The weight of those secrets changed her, though. She stopped singing in the shower, started jumping when the phone rang, lost weight even though we could finally afford food. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and find her sitting by the window, staring at nothing, rosary beads wrapped so tight around her fingers they left marks. One night in late April, I came home early from my shift. My partner was sick, and they sent me home rather than pay overtime. I found Loretta in the bathroom, burning papers in the sink. The smoke alarm was going off, and she was crying, mascara running down her cheeks like black rivers. "Baby, what are you doing?" I asked, grabbing the still burning papers and throwing them in the toilet. She collapsed against me, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. "I'm protecting us," she kept saying. "I'm protecting our family." I held her until she calmed down, helped her clean up the ashes, never asking what she was burning. That was my mistake. A good cop would have asked. A good husband would have demanded answers. But I was neither that night. I was just a tired man who wanted to believe everything was finally okay. The precinct was getting closer to the Torelli operation. We had informants, surveillance, financial records that showed money moving through dozens of banks in Manhattan. My sergeant pulled me aside one day, asked if I'd heard anything, seen anything. "Your wife works at Chase, right? She noticed anything unusual?" I said no so fast it sounded like a lie even to me, but he just nodded, moved on to the next theory. That night, I almost told Loretta about the investigation, almost warned her that whatever she was mixed up in, because I knew by then she was mixed up in something, she needed to stop. But when I got home, Marcus was showing her his grades from his first exams, all A's, and she was crying happy tears for the first time in years. How could I take that away? The secrets were eating us alive from the inside, like termites in the walls of a house that looks fine from the outside. She was lying to me. I was lying to her. We were both lying to Marcus, pretending everything was normal, that success had finally found us through legal means. But secrets have weight, and eventually, that weight becomes too much to carry. Something has to break. Someone has to break. And in our case, it was about to be everything we'd built, everything we'd saved, everything we'd sacrificed to protect. The devil always comes to collect, and he charges interest that compounds daily, just like those student loans that started this whole mess. Sunday was always sacred in the Washington house. No matter how bad things got, we dressed in our best clothes, even when our best was held together with iron-on patches, and went to First Baptist on 125th Street. But that Sunday in May was different. Loretta said she had a headache, needed to lie down. Marcus was studying for finals. So I went alone, sat in our usual pew, and prayed for answers to questions I was afraid to ask. Pastor Williams preached about truth and consequences, about how lies multiply like loaves and fishes, except instead of feeding the multitude, they devour the liar. I felt like he was speaking directly to me, like God was using his voice to warn me about what was coming. When the collection plate came around, I dropped in a 20. We could afford it now. But it felt like blood money, heavy with guilt I couldn't name. After church, I decided to surprise Loretta with lunch from her favorite Caribbean spot on Broadway. Maybe some curry goat and plantains would help her headache, bring back her smile. But when I got home, the apartment was empty. Her purse was gone. Her Sunday dress, the new blue one, was missing from the closet. And there was a note on the kitchen table. Ran to 7-Eleven for aspirin. Be back soon. Love you. Something about that note felt wrong. She never signed notes, love you. It was always love Loretta or just L. And we had a full bottle of aspirin in the medicine cabinet. I'd seen it that morning. My cop instincts started screaming, but I pushed them down. Trust your wife, Oliver. After 32 years, trust your wife. Marcus came home an hour later, face pale, hands shaking like he'd seen a ghost. Dad, he said, and his voice cracked like he was 12 again. Dad, I need to tell you something, but you're not going to believe me. He sat down at the kitchen table, in the same spot where Loretta had cried over bills 3 months ago, and told me what he'd seen. He'd been at his friend's apartment near the Marriott on West 45th Street, studying for his economics final. Decided to grab coffee from the place in the hotel lobby. That's when he saw her, in her blue Sunday dress, walking through the lobby with 5 men. They looked like security, Dad, like the Secret Service or something. All in black suits, earpieces, the whole thing. Mom was in the middle of them, and they went straight to the elevator. I wanted to call him a liar, wanted to say he was mistaken, that lots of women have blue dresses, that his mother would never, but I knew. Deep in my gut, I knew he was telling the truth. Did she see you? I asked, my voice steady even though my world was tilting. No, he said. I ducked behind a column. Dad, what's going on? Is Mom in trouble? I didn't answer because I didn't know what to say. How do you tell your son that his mother might be having an affair? Or worse, that she might be mixed up in something that could get us all killed? Instead, I told him to go back to studying, that I'd handle it. He looked at me with eyes too old for 22 and nodded. We both knew I was lying, but sometimes lies are all you have. When Loretta came home 2 hours later, she had aspirin in a 7-Eleven bag and receipts to prove where she'd been. Except the timestamp on the receipt was from 30 minutes ago, not 2 hours. And there was a smell on her clothes. Expensive cologne, the kind drug dealers wear to announce they've made it. I wanted to confront her right then, grab her shoulders and demand the truth. But I'd been a cop too long. You don't confront a suspect without evidence. You wait, you watch, you build your case. So I smiled, asked if her headache was better, and helped her make dinner. We ate in silence while Marcus pretended to study, and I pretended not to notice the new bruise on Loretta's wrist, the one shaped like someone had grabbed her too hard. That night, after she fell asleep, I went through her things. I know it was wrong, violating the trust of marriage, but trust was already broken. We just didn't know how badly yet. In her jewelry box, under the fake pearls her mother left her, I found the notebook. Pages and pages of numbers, dates, names I didn't recognize. And at the bottom, wrapped in tissue paper, $5,000 in $100 bills. Clean bills, sequential serial numbers, the kind that come straight from a bank or from someone who robs banks or from someone who helps robbers clean their money. I put everything back exactly as I found it, went to the bathroom, and threw up until there was nothing left but bile and fear. My wife, my Loretta, the woman who used to lead prayer circles and bake cookies for the church bake sale, was washing money for criminals. And I was a cop who'd sworn an oath to stop people like her. The revelation about the money changed everything and nothing all at once. I still kissed Loretta goodbye each morning, still told her I loved her, still pretended our life was normal. But now I watched her like a suspect, noticed every lie, every nervous glance, every time she checked her phone and deleted messages. She was getting sloppy, or maybe she wanted to get caught. The woman who once balanced our checkbook to the penny was now leaving cash in jacket pockets, stuffed in old purses, hidden in places she thought I'd never look. But I looked everywhere. By the end of May, I'd found nearly $20,000 scattered throughout our apartment, like she was a squirrel hiding nuts for winter. Except winter was coming in the form of a federal investigation, and no amount of hidden cash could protect us from that storm. Vincent started calling the house. He never said his name, but I recognized the voice, smooth, cultured, with just a hint of Brooklyn underneath the polish. "Is Mrs. Washington available?" he'd ask, and I'd hand her the phone, watch her face go pale as she took it into the bedroom. Sometimes she'd come out crying, sometimes angry, always scared. One night, after a particularly long call, she came out and just stood in the doorway, looking at me like she was memorizing my face. "If something happens to me," she started, but I cut her off. "Nothing's going to happen to you," I said, not believing it myself. She laughed, bitter and broken. "You don't know these people, Oliver. You don't know what they're capable of." But I did know. I'd seen their work on the streets, bodies that turned up in the East River, families that disappeared overnight, cops who suddenly retired to Florida and were never heard from again. The operation at the precinct was heating up. We had a joint task force with the FBI now, charts on the wall that looked like spider webs, connecting banks to businesses to bodies. Loretta's bank was right in the center of it all. During briefings, I'd stare at her bank's logo on the wall and feel my chest tighten until I couldn't breathe. My partner noticed, asked if I was okay. "Just this case," I said. "It's bigger than anything we've handled." He clapped me on the shoulder, said we were going to be heroes when we brought them down. Heroes. I wanted to laugh or cry. Heroes don't let their wives launder money for the mob. Heroes don't choose their family over their badge. Heroes don't lie to their partners, their sergeants, their sons about what they know. June brought heat and desperation in equal measure. Loretta was moving more money than ever, millions flowing through accounts she controlled like she was conducting some twisted orchestra of crime. The Torellis were preparing for something big, Vincent told her. One last score before they moved operations to Miami. She just had to hold on for 3 more weeks, then she was out. They'd pay her enough to disappear, start fresh somewhere the FBI couldn't find us. "We could go to Costa Rica," she said one night, lying in bed with the windows open, hoping for a breeze that never came. "Buy a little house on the beach. Marcus could finish school online. You could teach self-defense to tourists." She was planning our escape like it was a vacation, not a lifetime of running from the law and the Torellis, who didn't let anyone just walk away. Then came the Wednesday that changed everything. I was at my desk, filling out paperwork from a domestic dispute, when Agent Morrison from the FBI walked in with a folder. Inside were surveillance photos, grainy but clear enough. Loretta at an ATM at 2 a.m. Loretta meeting with a known Torelli associate in Central Park. Loretta entering the Marriott with Vincent Caruso and his crew. And the last one, Loretta and me at our anniversary dinner, her laughing at something I'd said, looking happy and in love and nothing like a criminal. "You know this woman?" Morrison asked, his voice carefully neutral. I stared at the photos, my whole life spread out like evidence, and made a choice that would haunt me forever. "Yeah," I said, my voice steady as my world crumbled. "She's a teller at the bank. Seen her around the neighborhood." Morrison nodded, made a note. "We think she's the key to this whole operation. We're moving on her next week." That night, I sat Loretta down and told her everything. About the investigation, the photos, the plan to arrest her. I expected her to run, to panic, to blame me. Instead, she just nodded, like she'd been expecting it. "I knew this day would come," she said, calm as Sunday morning. "I've been knowing it since the first envelope of cash. You can't dance with the devil without eventually paying the band." She told me everything then, about Vincent, the Torellis, the threats when she tried to quit, the promises that turned into chains. "They know where Marcus works," she said. "They know your patrol route. They know which nursing home your aunt is in. These people don't let you go, Oliver. You either work for them or you disappear. We sat there until dawn, holding hands across the kitchen table, planning how to save our son if we couldn't save ourselves. 3 days before the FBI raid, Loretta disappeared. Not the kind of disappearing where someone runs away, the kind where someone is taken. I came home from my shift to find the door open, coffee still warm on the counter, her reading glasses broken on the floor. There were no signs of struggle except for those glasses and a single drop of blood on the kitchen tile, so small I almost missed it. Marcus was at class. The neighbors hadn't heard anything. She was just gone, vanished like morning mist when the sun comes up. I should have called it in immediately, followed protocol, let the system work. Instead, I cleaned up the glasses, wiped up the blood, and started making calls to people a cop shouldn't know how to reach. The first 48 hours were hell disguised as waiting. I called in sick to work, told them I had food poisoning, spent the time driving to every place I thought they might have taken her. Warehouses in Queens, docks in Brooklyn, that hotel where Marcus saw her, where the manager said he'd never seen anyone matching her description. Lies everywhere, thick as summer humidity. Marcus knew something was wrong. His mother never missed his calls, never forgot to text him good night. "Where is she, Dad?" He kept asking, and I kept lying. She had to visit her sick cousin in Atlanta, last-minute emergency. But he saw through it, saw the fear I couldn't hide, the way I jumped every time the phone rang. Vincent finally called on day 3 from Loretta's phone. "Mr. Washington," he said like we were old friends. "Your wife has been telling us interesting things, like how you're a cop, like how you knew what she was doing, like how you've been protecting her from your investigation." My blood turned to ice water. "If you've hurt her," I started, but he cut me off with a laugh. "Hurt her? We're business partners, but business partnerships require trust, and trust requires verification. We need to know, are you a cop trying to bring us down, or are you a husband trying to save his wife?" The answer to that question would determine if I ever saw Loretta alive again. "I'm a husband," I said, the words tasting like betrayal. "Good answer. There's a warehouse in Red Hook. Come alone. Come unarmed. Come ready to prove your loyalty." He hung up before I could respond. I went, of course. What choice did I have? Left my gun, my badge, my dignity on the kitchen counter, and drove to Brooklyn like I was heading to my own execution. The warehouse was exactly what you'd expect. Abandoned, dark, smelling like motor oil and fear. They were waiting for me, 5 men in expensive suits that didn't match the rust and ruin around them. Vincent stood in the center, looking like a GQ model who'd taken a wrong turn. "Officer Washington," he said, emphasizing my title. "Or should I say Oliver? We're all friends here, after all. Your wife has been very helpful to our organization, but now we have a problem. The FBI is closing in. Your brothers in blue are getting nervous, and suddenly we discover our best money launderer is married to a cop. You can see how that makes us uncomfortable." They brought Loretta out then, and my knees almost buckled. She was alive, unharmed physically, but her eyes were empty like someone had turned off the light inside. "Oliver," she said, voice flat, "I'm sorry, I told them everything." Vincent smiled, the kind of smile a snake might give before it strikes. "She did. Told us about your debts, your failures, your desperate need for money. Told us how you looked the other way while she saved your family. Very touching. But now we need more than touching. We need insurance." He pulled out a gun, chrome, expensive, the kind that's never been registered, and handed it to me. "There's a rat in our organization, someone who's been talking to the FBI. He's in the next room. Kill him and your wife goes free. Refuse and, well, let's not explore that option." I took the gun, felt its weight like holding 30 years of integrity in my palm. In the next room was a man, tied to a chair, hood over his head. I didn't need to see his face to know he was somebody's husband, somebody's father, somebody's son, just like I was. Vincent stood behind me, Loretta beside him, tears running down her face. "Do it," Vincent said. "Prove you're one of us. Prove your family means more than your badge." I raised the gun, aimed at the hooded figure, and thought about every oath I'd ever taken. To protect and serve, to love and cherish, to be a good man in a bad world. Sometimes all your choices are wrong, and you just have to pick the one you can live with. Or in this case, The one that lets your family live. I didn't pull the trigger. Couldn't do it, even with Loretta's life in the balance. Instead, I turned the gun on Vincent, my hands steady for the first time in days. "Let her go," I said, "or I paint these walls with your brains." His men reached for their weapons, but Vincent raised a hand, actually smiled. "There it is," he said. "The cop who thinks he's a hero. Your wife told us you'd rather die than compromise your precious integrity. We just had to be sure." He nodded to one of his men, who removed the hood from the figure in the chair. It was a mannequin, a test, and I'd passed or failed, depending on how you looked at it. "Your wife has been very loyal to us," Vincent continued, "more loyal than you deserve. She's protected you, lied for you, risked everything for you. And how do you repay her? By pointing a gun at her business partner?" That's when the real truth came out, the truth that shattered what was left of my world. Loretta wasn't being forced, hadn't been for months. After the first few transactions, when she tried to quit, yes, they threatened us. But then she'd seen the money, felt the power, tasted what life could be like without constant fear of poverty. "I chose this, Oliver," she said, stepping away from Vincent to face me. "I chose to keep going. Not for them, for us, for Marcus, for the life we deserve but could never have on a cop's salary and a teller's wages." The gun grew heavy in my hand. My wife, my Loretta, wasn't a victim. She was a willing participant, a criminal, a stranger wearing the face of the woman I'd loved for 32 years. Every time you came home exhausted from a double shift, every time Marcus had to turn down an opportunity because we couldn't afford it, every time we had to choose between medicine and food, "I chose this," she continued, her voice getting stronger. "And I'd choose it again. Because poverty is its own kind of crime, Oliver. It steals your dignity, your health, your future. At least this way, we're stealing back." I wanted to argue, to remind her of everything we believed in, fought for, sacrificed for. But standing there in that warehouse, surrounded by men who'd kill us without blinking, I realized I didn't know my wife at all. Maybe I never had. Maybe the woman I loved was just another story I told myself to make the hard days bearable. Vincent took the gun from my hand, gentle like he was disarming a child. "Here's what's going to happen," he said. "The FBI raids tomorrow. They'll find nothing because we're cleaning everything out tonight. Your wife will be at work, innocent as a lamb. You'll be on patrol, just another cop doing his job. And when the dust settles, when the FBI admits they have nothing, we'll all go our separate ways. Your debts will be paid. Your son will finish college, and you'll never hear from us again." It sounded too good to be true because it was. The Torellas didn't let people walk away. But what choice did I have? I could arrest them all right now, call for backup, be the hero cop who brought down the mob, and then spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, waiting for them to come for Marcus. They let us go that night, Loretta and me, driving home in silence so thick you could choke on it. She tried to explain, to justify, to make me understand. "You never had to watch your mother clean houses for people who looked at her like dirt," she said. "Never had to drop out of school at 16 to work. Never had to wonder if you were worth anything more than your hourly wage. I did. And I swore my son would never feel that." I understood. God help me, I understood. But understanding and forgiving are different things. That night, we slept in the same bed but miles apart, both of us knowing that tomorrow would bring either salvation or destruction, and we had no control over which. Dawn came like Judgment Day, gray and unforgiving. I put on my uniform like armor, each piece a reminder of who I was supposed to be. Loretta dressed for work, her hands steady as she applied lipstick, looking for all the world like a woman with nothing to hide. We didn't speak, didn't touch, just moved around each other like ghosts haunting the same house. Marcus was still asleep, innocent to what was about to happen. I wanted to wake him, warn him, prepare him somehow for the earthquake about to hit our family. But what would I say? "Son, your mother's a money launderer, and your father's a coward who let it happen?" So I let him sleep, let him have a few more hours of peace before his world exploded. At the precinct, everyone was wired, ready for the big raid. FBI agents in tactical gear, NYPD's finest ready to make history. My sergeant pulled me aside, said I was being assigned to perimeter duty, far from the action, safely out of the way. Can't have any appearance of conflict of interest, he said. Your wife works at that bank. Better you're nowhere near it when we go in. He knew. Somehow, he knew. But he was giving me an out. I wanted to hug him, this man who'd been like a father to me for 10 years. Instead, I just nodded, took my assignment, and tried not to vomit from the anxiety eating my insides. At exactly 10 a.m., they hit the bank. I heard it over the radio, tried to picture Loretta's face when the FBI agent stormed in, weapons drawn, shouting for everyone to get down. Would she be surprised? Relieved? Had Vincent warned her, or was she finding out with everyone else that the game was over? I sat in my patrol car 6 blocks away, listening to the chaos unfold, my partner beside me wondering why I was sweating in the air conditioning. Probably nothing, he said about the raid. These feds always think they've got something big, then it turns out to be some kid stealing from the till. If only it were that simple. Then the radio crackled with words that made my blood freeze. We've got a situation, possible hostage scenario. Request immediate backup. Without thinking, I hit the sirens and raced toward the bank, my partner shouting questions I couldn't answer. When we arrived, the street was chaos. Police cars everywhere, FBI vans, ambulances waiting for casualties that hadn't happened yet. And in the middle of it all, Vincent Caruso's town car, abandoned with the doors open. They'd been there when the raid started. This wasn't a raid anymore. It was a rescue operation. And somewhere inside that bank was my wife, caught between the FBI and the mob, paying for choices we'd both made. Agent Morrison saw me, tried to wave me back, but I was already out of the car, vest on, moving toward the bank. Washington, you can't be here, he said, but I pushed past him. That's my wife in there, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. That's my wife. The admission rippled through the crowd of cops, some nodding with understanding, others looking at me with suspicion. Morrison grabbed my arm, pulled me aside. We know about Loretta, he said quietly. We've known for weeks. We were hoping to flip her, get her to testify. But now, he gestured at the bank where negotiators were already setting up. Now we just want everyone to come out alive. For 6 hours we waited. 6 hours of not knowing if Loretta was alive, if she was a hostage or a conspirator, if Vincent would kill her to keep her quiet or use her as a bargaining chip. Marcus showed up around hour 3, his face a map of confusion and fear. Dad, what's happening? They said Mom's bank is on lockdown. Is she okay? I held my son, this good boy we'd raised despite everything, and told him the truth. Part of it, anyway. That his mother was inside, that bad men were involved, that we had to trust the system to bring her home. He looked at me with eyes that suddenly understood too much. The money, he said quietly. All that money that appeared. Mom didn't get a promotion, did she? Kids always know more than you think they do. They just love you enough to pretend they don't. At 4:47 p.m., they started coming out. First the other tellers, crying, shaking, holding each other. Then the customers who'd been trapped inside, telling reporters how brave everyone had been, how one teller in particular had kept everyone calm, had negotiated with the gunman. They didn't say her name, but I knew they meant Loretta. My wife, the hostage negotiator. My wife, the money launderer. My wife, the woman I didn't know anymore. Then came Vincent and 2 of his men, hands up, surrounded by FBI agents. He looked right at me as they put him in the van, smiled and mouthed something I couldn't make out. A threat? A promise? A goodbye? I'd never know. Loretta came out last, walking between 2 FBI agents, but not in handcuffs. Her dress was torn, her hair a mess, but she was walking, talking, alive. Our eyes met across the chaos, and for a moment, we were just Oliver and Loretta again, 2 kids from Harlem who fell in love over coffee and dreams. Then the moment broke, and she was in the back of an FBI car, and I was standing on the sidewalk, a cop who'd failed at everything that mattered. Morrison walked over, put a hand on my shoulder. She's cooperating, he said. Told us everything. The whole operation, names, dates, amounts. She's going to be okay, Washington. Probably witness protection, but okay. The debriefing lasted hours. They separated Marcus and me, questioned us individually, wanted to know how much we knew, when we knew it, why we didn't report it. I told them the truth, that I was a coward who chose his family over his badge. They could have arrested me, should have, but Morrison made it disappear. You're a good cop who got caught in an impossible situation, he said. Your wife made choices to protect your family. Wrong choices, but understandable ones. Don't throw away your career over this. Your son's going to need you." He was right, but being right didn't make it easier to look at myself in the mirror. They let me see Loretta one more time before witness protection took her. We sat in a gray room that smelled like industrial disinfectant and broken dreams. "I'm sorry," she said, reaching for my hand. I let her take it, memorized the feeling of her fingers interlaced with mine. "I'm sorry I wasn't the man you needed me to be," I replied. "The kind who could provide enough that you never had to make this choice." She laughed, bitter and sad. "We both failed, Oliver. Failed each other. Failed Marcus. Failed ourselves. But we survived. That has to count for something." Did it? I wasn't sure. Survival without honor felt like another kind of death. "They're giving me a new name, new life, new everything," she said. "Somewhere warm, they promised. Somewhere I can start over." She squeezed my hand. "You could come. You and Marcus. They'd relocate all of us." For a moment, I considered it. Leave New York, leave the force, leave everything behind, and start fresh. But I was a cop, had been for 30 years. It wasn't just what I did. It was who I was. And Marcus had a life here, friends, school, a future that didn't deserve to be destroyed because his parents made bad choices. "You know I can't," I said. She nodded, tears finally coming. "I know. I just had to ask." We signed papers that night, Marcus and I. Agreements that we wouldn't try to find her, wouldn't investigate where she went, wouldn't compromise her safety for our selfish need to hold on. In exchange, the FBI buried my involvement, let me keep my badge, my pension, my reputation. Marcus could finish school without the shame of having a convicted felon for a mother. It was a good deal, the lawyers said. The best we could hope for, considering. But as I watched my wife of 32 years walk away for the last time, turning back once to blow us a kiss, I wondered what we'd really gained. We traded poverty for crime, crime for separation, separation for survival. And at the end of it all, we were still broken, just in different ways. It's been 15 years now since that day at the bank. 15 years since I last saw Loretta, heard her voice, held her hand. Marcus finished college, became a teacher, married a good woman who knows our story and loves him anyway. They have 2 kids, twins who have their grandmother's eyes but will never know her name. I retired from the force 5 years ago. Full pension, commendations on my record, the whole thing. They never found out about my involvement, or if they did, they chose to look the other way. Sometimes mercy comes dressed as ignorance, and you don't question the disguise. I think about Loretta every day, wonder if she's happy, if she remarried, if she ever thinks about us. The FBI handler I'm not supposed to know about sends me a Christmas card every year. No return address, no message, just a picture of a sunset over water. I think it's his way of telling me she's okay. Or maybe I just need to believe that, need to know that all our sacrifice meant something. That somewhere the woman I loved is sitting on a porch, watching the sunset, finally at peace with the choices she made. We all need our fairy tales, even when we know they're lies. Vincent Caruso got 25 to life, sang like a canary, they said, gave up everyone to save himself. The Torelli family crumbled, replaced by new criminals with new methods, same old poison. The bank implemented new security measures, trained their tellers to spot money laundering, acted like they hadn't known all along what was happening. And life went on, the way it always does, indifferent to our individual tragedies. New cops replaced old ones. New families struggled with the same desperate choices. New secrets were born in the space between survival and surrender. I live alone now in a 1-bedroom in the Bronx, far from the old neighborhood and its memories. But sometimes on Sunday mornings, I go back to First Baptist on 125th Street, sit in our old pew, and pray for forgiveness. Not from God. I think he understands desperation better than anyone. But from the idealistic young cop I used to be, the one who believed in absolute right and wrong, who thought integrity was more important than survival. That boy would be disgusted by the man I became. But that boy never had to choose between his badge and his family's lives. Never had to watch his wife disappear into witness protection. Never had to lie to his son about where grandma went. Marcus asked me once if I regretted not going with her, not choosing the new life, the fresh start. I told him the truth, that I regret everything and nothing all at once. Regret the lies, the crimes, the way it ended. But I don't regret protecting my family, even if the protection came wrapped in crime. We do what we have to do to survive, and then we live with the consequences. That's not nobility, it's just life. And life, I've learned, is messier than any law, more complicated than any oath, more precious than any principle. If you've made it this far in my story, you're probably wondering what the lesson is, what wisdom I can offer from my 73 years of mistakes and miracles. Here it is. Love makes us capable of anything, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. It can make a good woman launder money for the mob. It can make an honest cop betray his badge. It can destroy everything you've built, and somehow in the ruins, help you build something new. Not better, necessarily, but new. And sometimes, when you've lost everything that mattered, new is all you can hope for. That's my story. That's my truth. That's my confession, laid bare for anyone who needs to know they're not alone in choosing wrong when all the choices are impossible. We survived. Broken, separated, forever changed. But we survived. And some days, that's the only miracle you get. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it touched your heart, if it made you think about the impossible choices we all face, then maybe our pain meant something. Like this video if you felt something. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories from folks who've lived through the unimaginable. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. It means the world to know our stories reach across the miles. Remember this. We're all just trying to make it through. Some of us just take darker roads than others. But even on the darkest road, love can be a light, even when it leads us astray, even when it costs us everything. Until next time, this is Oliver James Washington, reminding you that every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. God bless, and hold your loved ones close. You never know when you might have to let them go.